On this Sega Talk, we're doing things a little differently. Join us as we embark on a journey through every unreleased Dreamcast game. We share what we know, give our thoughts, and then give them a letter grade ranking on a tier list. Is it a game we wish would release, or is it a game we are better off without? Let's find out on this epic two-part Sega Talk. SegaBits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to episode number 128 of Sega Talk. I'm Barry, with me is George.
Unreleased George.
Unreleased George. And, you know, George, this is kind of fitting because Saw 10 is releasing to theaters this week as we record it, and this is kind of like our Saw test. It's like he sent the little puppet guy, and he's like, "Hello, Barry and George. You like talking about Sega? You're going to be talking about every unreleased Dreamcast game." So to make it a little more palpable, I chopped it in half. It's a list of, I don't know, like 120, 140 games. So we're going to cover, I guess, around 60 of them tonight. And before we jump into it, I should talk about who we can blame for all this. So this is a Patreon pick from Michael S. And George, why don't you tell them about our Patreon and how people can pick saw traps like this for us?
So if you're into movies that have 10 entries, you could, I don't know what it has to do with our Patreon, but if you go to patreon.com/SegaBits, you can support this channel. With $1, you can get the audio podcast early. With $5, you get the video podcast early. But if you generously give us $20, you get to pick an episode of Sega Talk once per month. And people usually have some interesting picks or ideas. So if you have an idea like this or a pick for a specific game, you could always check us out on patreon.com/SegaBits.
Absolutely. So tonight we are talking about unreleased Dreamcast games. So what are unreleased games? Well, these are games that either had a port planned and they actually did either release before the Dreamcast was, dead, or they released after to a console like PlayStation 2 or Xbox. There's a lot of PC ports. There's also a lot of games that were announced and it's unknown if they were ever even worked on. There's also games that leaked and we've had playable portions of them. There's also games that were completed entirely but just didn't release, and that's of course because, at least in America, Dreamcast had a very short 18-month shelf life, which is insane. Yeah, and in Japan it was a little bit longer. It was November 98 to March 2001, something like that. But yeah, so what we're going to be doing is we have a tier list, and what we are going to be doing for these tiers is we're going to be dropping them into S, A, B, C, and D. And of course, because we release this podcast both as a video and audio, we will do our best to give you an idea if you don't have the visuals. But essentially, S is for us going to be kind of like a game that would have been great and likely would have helped maybe save the Dreamcast, or at least let it live a little bit longer. A, I would say, would be a game like, it would be great, but it probably wouldn't have saved it. In my opinion, that would be like an arcade port that we've never received. So, for example, the the Like a Dragon and Yakuza games, they're finally giving us ports of games that likely would have released on the Dreamcast, which
Spike Out?
So,
is that the game you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if Spike Out's on this list, but it's that kind of flavor. B would be games that might be good, might be bad, we're not sure, but they're intriguing. C would be games that would be kind of forgettable, maybe goofy to like revisit, but honestly, they wouldn't have done much for the console. And then D, of course, are ones where it's like, I'm glad they did not release that. It probably would have hurt the console or just been like a waste of a decent jewel case. You know, like that jewel case could have been for like something a little better. So yeah, let's dive right into this. And this list is coming from Sega Retro. So if you want to follow along, you can actually search Sega Retro list of unreleased Dreamcast games. There's a whole big old list in there. So the first one we're going to be talking about is 10-6. This would have been published by Sega, developed by Sega Soft, released in the autumn of 2000. It was a MMO that actually was released in America, believe it or not.
Really?
And yeah, it came out February 2000, but it was going to be ported to the Dreamcast and allow for potentially crossplay. It was at 106.com, and it just never happened. So, George, where would you place this one on the list?
Well, I'm looking at gameplay footage on the website. You could see it. Oh shoot! And I mean, it's a 3D game, which at the time I guess meant something, but the like graphics are kind of low budget.
Yeah.
So to me, it and like it's overhead, kind of a computer game, with like hoverboarding. I would place this at like a C, in my opinion. I don't know about you.
I would say C as well. It would be interesting, but you know, it probably would have been a game that you can't play later on. I doubt there's an offline mode, considering people don't play it now.
So C
the next
for the
game,
first one.
The next game is Agartha. That's from Sega, published and developer No Cliche. It would have released in 2001. We actually have cover art for it. And this one, to my knowledge, a lot of people said it would have played kind of like Shenmue. It was European developed. It would have been an adventure game. Sega's decision to stop development led to No Cliche making most of their staff redundant, and thus the game was canceled. Not much can be said about it outside of the cover art, but I remember coverage of this. What are your thoughts?
This is by the developer that made Toy Commanders, so like that alone at least gets me a little thinking about the game. You know what I mean? Because Toy Commander it wasn't. So that's the thing with Toy Commander. It didn't sell consoles. Mm-hmm. Really, it wasn't a name brand. I think hardcore fans liked it. So at that, I would at least put it as a B because I feel like it's better than 10-6. What about you?
I probably would put it mid-range. We don't know much about it, but it would have been interesting. Yeah, for sure. All right, next one is Age of Empires 2. Age of Empires 2 was from Konami, published and developed by Ensemble Studios. We know what Age of Empires is. It's a PC real-time strategy game, sequel to Age of Empires. Dreamcast version was announced but canceled. I'm just going to speak up and say this one would have been... I mean, we know what Age of Empires is. I'd say B. You know, it's out there, though. It's not like the game was completely canceled.
Right, and I've never played back then, at least, a RTS type style game where it actually worked on a console. So to me, it's like I would wanted to see more. Age of Empires is a big name, especially in PC. So like Dreamcast having it is like it having Quake 3. Yeah. Even though Quake 3 obviously plays better on PC, it was still pretty much a big deal because it was PC style game on a console. So I guess it would use the mouse and keyboard. So
yeah,
could work.
Yeah. The next one is Air Knights. It was an unreleased sequel to Nights into Dreams, set for release on the Saturn and then the Dreamcast. Never materialized, however, it did eventually emerge in the form of Knight's Journey of Dreams for the Wii. And we talk about this, I think, a little bit more on our Nights into Dreams episode, so you can check that out. Air Knights, George, what are your thoughts?
Well, I know we have that image of the controller that looks like the Wiimote, but I think that's probably a more popular thing about this, that it was going to have its own control. My opinion is I liked Knights growing up, but I don't know if Knights was a system seller, especially in America at least, especially where the Dreamcast was the most popular, because I don't know, like obviously the Saturn didn't sell well. So this is a sequel to the flagship title.
Right.
When like you had Sonic Adventures, so I would say A, because it's going to be a great game, but I don't think it would sell like systems the way to save it at least for a time.
Definitely agree on that one. Acolyte. This is not how you spell acolyte. Akolyte. It sounds like a modern,
right?
Like an app where they have to misspell it because every other word's actually taken now. Not much is known about this. It's an unreleased action game for the Dreamcast from Lonos. A PC version is rumored to exist, but nothing's materialized. You know, in the case of these types of games, it's really hard to say when we know nothing about them. I don't want to delist it, but what else can I say? I don't
right.
feel. I guess nothing about it really grabs me, and I mean, it hardly exists. It's one step away from not existing at all in our consciousness outside of the name. What do you think? D?
Maybe not even. Yeah, I guess. Or we could put it on the way on the right hand corner of like games that we don't even know anything about, so they don't even exist technically.
All right. If you want to stick it all the way to the right of D, that'll be the abyss.
The abyss
there.
corner. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, we have Alice, Virus Composer. What the hell? Well, this is from Media Factory. And again, not much is known about it. It's a simulation. It was mentioned a few times in magazines. Has an interesting name. I'm going to guess it's like a sim game that has something to do with the human body. Virus Composer. D. D in the abyss.
Okay.
Sorry, Alex. And he's a Patreon. Alex. No, he's not. Speaking of Alex, we have his older brother. Maybe it's his dad. It's Alexander, The Road to Persia. And that's again from Media Factory. It's kind of funny. There's two Alex games. Now this one, it's a simulation. Again, Persia is likely a mistranslation of Persia. But every single source for this game uses a misspelled spelling of Persia. And just so you guys know, Media Factory, from what I can tell, they did not make much of substance. They did ports of columns to other consoles. And that's it. And they did books. They were a book publisher. They made more books than games. So, again, like D, Out in the Abyss, it's just one of those games that we hear about, but, you know, I bet we're going to have a lot of Abyss games. They're just going to become a pile at some point, a cluster.
I wonder, like, how many Dreamcast games were just announced before they even had more than a logo. They're like, oh, this game.
Right, and it's so easy to, like, make announcements, and you never know, some companies might be doing it to beef up their portfolio.
Right.
Which actually brings up the next one, Alien Breed Conflict. It was a planned real-time strategy game for the Dreamcast to be released as part of Team 17's Alien Breed series. So this is a game from a series of games from publisher and developer Team 17. They did Worms for the Mega Drive, Worms 3D. So this is the Worms people. These are the Worms guys. So with that in mind, I don't know. Like, we don't know much about this, but it is from an established IP, and it is from the Worms guys. Where would you put this? I will let you make that decision.
I really like Worms. I have fond memories of playing Worms on the Dreamcast. So, like, I would have to put it on, like, B at least. We didn't know enough if it was going to be a great game, but since it's a developer that I'm excited. I mean, like, the same thing with the guys that did Toy Commander. So, like, I think it deserves at least the middle.
All right. That's fair. Next one is Alien Resurrection from Fox Interactive. Now, this game is a PlayStation first-person shooter, and it was essentially going to be a port of a PlayStation game. So this is a game that does exist. You can play it, but there is no port to the Dreamcast. I personally feel like in these situations, it's a game that we could try out and play for ourselves and form an opinion. I don't think this is probably a very great game.
Right, because
considering
we don't have people celebrating it, right?
Right. So I'd almost go like C for these types of games because we can still play them, but they're actually not that great,
Gotcha. I'll put it on
in
C.
my opinion. And you could have said to me, "Amen, Barry," because "Amen: The Awakening" is our next game. This one's from Cave Dog Entertainment, and I got to tell you guys, we don't know anything about this one. And
Amen.
Don't you love it? Like, they announce a game called what are you working on? Oh man, we got this game, Amen: The Awakening. What's it about? Don't know. Do you have any materials? No.
Mm-mm. So it goes down to the D, banished
down
to the
down to the D. Yeah. The next one is Animaster Puzzle. This one is from Kure Miyuki Jimusho. It was going to release in 2000, and it's essentially a puzzle game that was going to be related to Animaster. And Animaster is actually a Dreamcast game that did exist. And if you take a look at it, it's a role-playing game from AKI. It was going to be Game Boy Color compatible, which is interesting. I think this is actually one of the games that would have used that Game Boy Color link cable that I believe was recently posted about on SEGA Bits. And just taking a look at that game, 68%, so it's not bad. I'm not IGN here. I think 68 is actually pretty positive for a game that looks like a Pokemon puzzle ripoff. So this essentially would have been a puzzle extension to a Pokemon-style game. Where would you place this?
I mean, the other one didn't even make any rounds. This is going to just be a puzzle game. I would say it would just be like a C. I think putting it in B for a developer that we don't know anything about would be too much. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree there. I think it would have been a game some people import and they're like, it's kind of fun, it's playable, but not much more than that. I mean, it's pretty much like take Digimon and go down a few pegs, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of puzzle games, there's Aqua Panic. This one we know nothing about.
Oh, beautiful.
It would have been published by SEGA, and that's about it. We know nothing
it's a puzzle
about the
game. I mean, we
developer.
just know that it's a puzzle game. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Where would you put this?
D in the Abyss. Yeah, it's just I feel like there's so many puzzle games on the Dreamcast that do exist that we don't talk about.
Right.
So the mere fact that, this next one, though, it looks a little interesting. It's called Arcatria, the Dark Brotherhood. And man, back in the day, some sort of stupid subtitle was super big. I mean, we already had Amen, and Alex, Virus Composer, but now we have Arcatria, the Dark Brotherhood. But this one would have come from Ubisoft. It was developed by Westka Entertainment. They had planned release dates for a couple of years. They kept pushing it back. It would have been an adventure game. There actually are screenshots. I don't think I added them to this one, but
I'm looking at them on the thing so people could see it.
Yeah, it's kind of your typical sword and sorcery. What I don't understand is it has a review.
It must be a good game.
It must be a glitch because it says based on one review by who? Like a Russian gave it 83, and how much do we, trust the Russians?
Says Russian. Yeah, it just says RU. I don't know what that means. Is this on like? I guess it never released on anything, right?
No. And so this one, I'm intrigued. This is one of those kind of like Agartha. It's intriguing, but I think. And you're going to see a pattern here. A lot of these canceled like adventure games that we do have details for, they're all like dark in castles with guys with beards. It's kind of a theme. It's a theme. I'll let you place this one. It's intriguing to me.
I would put it on B because it's like I mean at this time Ubisoft wasn't a big publisher, but I think Sega needed more. Like, it was so Japanese centric that like any U.S. game that would be like this kind of reminds me of like Silver, but with a American touch to it. So
Yeah.
I'll put it on
Yeah.
B. It wouldn't have lit the world on fire, but it would have been cool to have.
Yeah, and some games that did release that kind of remind me of this are, like some games that I actually quite enjoy, like the name D2, and what's that one with the dude with the glasses and he rides a motorcycle? It was only released in Europe.
Headhunter.
Headhunter. Like, it's one of those games where it's a little different and unique. There's some elements to it that remind me of other games, but yeah, this next one though, Arena Football, and I think this is our first sports game here. It's actually an unreleased American football game set to be published by Midway Games, and it was a PlayStation version was announced at the same time. And it likely actually was released, but as a different game called Kurt Warner's Arena Football Unleashed, which was critically panned.
Right, Kurt Warner sucks, so we definitely have to put this in the D just to show him.
Yeah, well, and regardless, like, considering we kind of have a sense of what the game would have been like, and it was shit, D. And, George, you're a football guy. Like, the Dreamcast has some great football games, it also has some really shitty ones, right?
Well, I mean, NFL 2K is one of those, which is weird because I was looking at a review recently of Madden 2024, and people still compare Madden to some features of NFL 2K5, so that's how prolific Sega sports title used to be. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
This next one, it's called Armada 2 Exodus from Metro 3D, who are a developer and publisher. This was actually going to be the sequel to Armada, which was advertised but never released. It was set to support online play. And we actually have a few development materials here, promotional screens, a logo.
Wow.
And this one, Armada itself, that one actually released November 20th, 99. It was released, let's see... it was just, it's an action RPG. I actually think I own it, and I never really played it. This one, I think I'd love to cover on Sega Talk. It's a game that, it exists,
right?
But I never think about it. And that's kind of a perfect B game, in my opinion, because it intrigues me, but it kind of floats out there, neither helping the console or bringing it down. So
it's
I mean, if Armada 2, it sits in the middle. So if Armada 2 were to happen with online play, I don't know, B.
And I noticed that they also I guess we'll cover it. They have another one that they didn't release the developer, but yeah.
Oh, George, you feeling that?
What is it?
It's Austin Powers' Mojo Rally from Rockstar Games and Climax. Wow. So, yeah.
Rockstar Games was going to make it? That's crazy.
It would have been developed by Climax and published by Rockstar Games. And just so our listeners are aware, Climax, they have a very interesting portfolio. They did Back to the Future 2 on the Master System. They did Bugs Bunny and Double Trouble on the Game Gear. They did Muppets on the Go on the Pico, and they had 4 unreleased Dreamcast games. They didn't release any of these, so we're actually going to be covering them again on this. But yeah, nothing on their... Like, what have they done that really jumps out at me? Nothing. I mean, FIFA 98, cool. Yeah, I honestly want to place this one at C because it probably would have been terrible, but it would have been must own.
Right, because it's Austin Powers. Yeah, I would agree. I would imagine a really good Austin Powers game. That would be ridiculous. I don't know why. I just think it would be awesome. Like if a Rockstar made an open world.
But in this case, it's like it joins it would have joined the pantheon of bad mascot racers on the Dreamcast, which I honestly love. Even the worst mascot racers on the Dreamcast, I love. Like that weird Disneyland one or Disney World one where you don't actually race as any Disney characters. It's the weirdest game.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh boy, here we got a big one. Next one is Baldur's Gate. This would have been developed by BioWare and SEGA and released by SEGA. It is, of course, based on the RPG by BioWare, which, if you guys don't remember, BioWare did MDK2 on the Dreamcast.
And it's like a D&D game. It's like the licensing is D&D universe. So...
And
well, I'm just saying the name actually came back, like, they released Baldur's Gate 3 not that long ago, and it's pretty popular again. So, yeah. Interesting. That's all.
Yeah, this one, I mean, it's BioWare. They make great games. I loved MDK2. I think this would have maybe helped the console, so I don't know, I feel S or A is really fitting.
Yeah, I would say I would want to say S, because I feel like a lot of people talked about Quake 3, and it was a big deal having those PC-style games, and the idea of having one of the biggest CRPGs available on the Dreamcast, especially with the add-on of a mouse and a keyboard so you could play like PC, would have been a big boost in the... at least in people talking about the console. Like, people would literally be like, I can't afford a computer, but I could play PC-style game RPGs on my Dreamcast for, what was it, like $100. Kind of hard to beat that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This next one, it's called Battle Beaster 2. The name just makes me laugh. It's published by Studio Wonder Effect, and it would have been a sequel to Battle Beaster, which actually was a game released to the Dreamcast, at least only in Japan. It was developed by Studio Wonder Effect, and it's a sim game. And with these types of games, like, at least over here in the West, which is, I think, the perspective we're coming at with these, we haven't covered many, if any, Japanese games yet, but there are some on this list. And honestly, the way I look at them is, could this be ported, and would it have been good? And I would say no, considering the first one never came over. So it's almost like D, but only because it's unplayable as an import, and it never would have been ported.
Right. It was... Yeah, like how... Yeah, I probably would agree that they wouldn't have released this. So where would you rank it at?
I'd say D, but on the left side. Where
No,
even if it was released, no one's going to be importing it, and it's never going to be coming over here. And I think the same goes with the next game, too. It's called Bikuriman 2000 Cameron Zetai no Inbo.
Say it again 3 times fast again.
Bikuriman 2000 Cameron... I can't do it. But it's basically based on an anime series called Bikuriman 2000, which, to my knowledge, did it ever release in the West?
So it's based on okay, so the anime is based on a snack brand, so it's like a anime for snacks.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
No. I delist this one too, unfortunately. Yeah. Not out of hate, but just out of, again, if you've ever gone to a convention and like dug through the bins of games, there's so many you pass by that are Japanese where you're like, this looks interesting, but I'm not going to play it. And that's Bikuriman 2000 Cameron Zete no Enbu. Now this next game, this is a big one, in my opinion. This was covered a lot in magazines, online. It's Black and White from Lionhead Studios. It was, there's a lot to say about this game, almost to the point where I feel like it could be a Sega Talk episode.
Right. Like, I remember the hype for this game, like, even on PC, like, because Lionhead Studios was really, really good at hyping their games, like, like infamous Fable videos they would put where it's like, did you ever think about what a glass of water is and all this bullshit? Remember, like, he would be like, we simulate literally water in this game, real water.
Right. And this game did get released to the PC, so it is out there. You can play it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I kind of feel like this would be S.
Lionhead's a big studio. Even though the game people like panned it at the time, it sold really, really well. There wasn't a game of this quality, at least on. I think it was overhyped by the marketing, but I feel like it's kind of like No Man's Skies or whatever. Like they updated the game and made it way better, and now people like it. Or Cyberpunk, where it's like this game, if it came out on PC first and they got the updates on like the ultimate version on Dreamcast, it would definitely S tier.
Let's do it.
All right.
Next one is Blood 2, The Chosen, an unreleased game from Monolith Productions.
And we talked a little bit about this on our Condemned 2 episode as one of the early games.
Yeah.
Right.
So Blood 2, The Chosen, and I don't know, like Monolith is cool and all. I kind of feel like even though we don't know much about it, it's kind of a B because we know about the developer. Right.
And the Blood 2 was on PC. I would say, yeah, because like it was actually critically acclaimed, but no one actually knows what Blood is. So it would be one of those like, oh, another wannabe Quake. It's kind of like we had Unreal Tournament in a way too. Even if it has its differences, a lot of people would just be like, oh, another PC shooter thing.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I would say B is fair. We have another sequel here, too, with Blood in the title. That's Bloody Roar 2.
Do you ever play the Bloody Roar games on PlayStation?
I haven't. What would you say a sequel released to the Dreamcast would be like?
Well, I mean, they had 1, 2 on PlayStation, and so this would be a PlayStation port. And they had, I liked 1 a lot. 2, I thought, I don't know what it was. It was such a long time ago that I played it when I was a kid. Something about the system just didn't capture me. But basically, the idea is you fight, you build up a rage meter, then you turn into like a furry or a beast, really. So It's called Bloody Roar. So you. They're pretty cool fighting 3D games and like that were popularized. Remember Virtua Fighter? They had so many fighting games coming out at that time because of Tekken and Virtua Fighter's popularity. This is just one of those games that came out that tried to capitalize on the 3D fighting craze on the PlayStation. So I would say it's not. Yeah, I would say B at least because it was actually a good game. Okay. It was a fun game. It was well designed, and I think fighting games were doing pretty well in the Dreamcast. And we didn't have we had Virtua Fighter 3 TB, which was not exactly the same as the arcade. So I think this one would have been a pretty good to add with Dead or Alive. So it would probably be like Dead or Alive tier in a way, maybe a little lower than that.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fair. This next one is Border Zone from Infogrames. It's actually a game that was released to PC, and there was also a Game Boy Color port. They demonstrated the Dreamcast version at E3 2000, but canceled it for unknown reasons. Me personally, it was published by Infogrames, not developed by them. It was from a company called Housemarque. These snowboarding games, like, they exist already. I feel like this would have just been another one. And
the graphics are nice, though, at least.
Yeah, and so with that in mind, I don't know, like, it kind of feels like maybe if I'm feeling happy on a good day, I'd give it a B, just because it's like, it doesn't look bad, but it's kind of forgettable. And if I'm going to give Agartha a B, I think Border Zone deserves a B. Right. We have Brave Knight. This is a game from publisher Panther Software. It's an unreleased game, obviously. It's a simulation. It was announced in late 98, but they went silent around March 2001. It moved to the Xbox as Brave Knight Livland Avenue in 2003.
Did it come out on Xbox? I never heard
that's a good question. Let's see. It did.
And it was only Japan? That's crazy.
It's a Japanese-only Xbox game that kind of looks Sakura Tyson-esque.
Well, actually, I don't know. It's weird because they have it on Unseen 64 as this is the DC version. I guess there was like screenshots leaked of what it would look like on Dreamcast.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
And this is not going to sell on I mean, I'm just saying, like, yeah, this is definitely not.
The name, I thought maybe we'd be getting like a Western game or something, but it's clearly one of those games where it's like it wouldn't have released over here.
Right.
But like left side, or I should say right side D, because I can't judge it because I can't play it, and I won't play it.
Right.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer from Fox Interactive.
Wow. Because she's, I mean, what? No. I don't know, actually, because I need to know more about this game, because this is going to be a bad license game, right?
Yeah, so this game, it was developed by The Collective, and it would have released to Dreamcast, PlayStation, PC, and Xbox, but eventually only the Xbox version released.
I think I did see this cover now that you say it.
Yeah, so Buffy on the Xbox, it actually has decent reviews.
Somebody wants $139 for it, like, no
But
way.
yeah, it seems like, well, someone else wants $20 for it, so...
I would rather go with that guy.
But yeah, as far as the reception, it actually received very, very positive reviews. It received 9 out of 10 from official Xbox magazine, 8.2 out of 10 from IGN. So, honestly, maybe like... It's hard to say. I almost want to say A, because it did get very positive reviews.
And it's another 3D game on the Dreamcast, which I mean, like, having decent 3D games is a big deal, especially since the Saturn had so little that for. Right. And this game looks pretty alright graphically, considering.
Let's be very nice and give it an A, because I feel like we said, an A is a game that probably would have been good, but not saved the console, but it maybe would have, boosted the library a little bit.
Right.
Now, this next one actually ties in with our Patreon picker, Michael S. He had memories of this. So this is Castlevania Resurrection. And he said Castlevania Resurrection was a game I was really looking forward to, especially after Symphony of the Night. A 3D game looked awesome. And so, yeah, there is a lot to be said about this one as well. Maybe not enough for a Sega Talk episode. But I bet we could do like a Castlevania episode where we cover all the Castlevania games that were on Sega consoles, because there aren't a lot of them. But yeah, this was an unreleased entry called Aku Maju Dracula in Japan. And it was going to be the second Castlevania title for a Sega console. So I think when we do the Genesis one, we'll talk about this one more in depth. But there's a whole history behind the development. There is a pre-E3 demo build that was discovered, and there's a whole plot and everything. But looking at the screenshots, again, a fully 3D adventure game, that's always good for Sega,
right,
for the Dreamcast. What would you say to this one?
I'm not a big fan of 3D Castlevania games, but I do remember with my friends playing the 64 ones, and we were...
Yeah.
I personally didn't like them, but I saw why people... I like the 2D action, like Symphony of the Night. I thought that was awesome. So the 3D just never really clicked as tight as those. But yeah. I would think it would have been cool to have a Castlevania game. I wish it would have been like Symphony of the Night, not a 3D one. But I think the Castlevania 64 games did pretty well anyways, and they were pretty well received back then as what they were. And this one reminds me of the 64 one a lot. So I would say it would be right there as a like probably third Castlevania 3D game, like the Nintendo 64 ones. So I would say, just because of the brand name, and I'm a nice person, of course, I would put him as A, because I think Castlevania, especially back then, still had a lot of sway. Yeah. So yeah, A.
I'd agree there. And I think the next one is kind of a similar flavor. It's Chaken, an unreleased action game developed by And Now, a sequel to the titular 1992 Sega Mega Drive game, Chaken. It was reportedly canceled due to difficulties working with the Dreamcast hardware. Some of the game's assets were demonstrated in promotional material, but no proper gameplay was ever shown. The lead artist for the game later recycled many unused designs for the 2002 Crystal Dynamics game Blood Omen 2. So we can't really say Blood Omen 2 is the finished product, but at least art-wise, it kind of borrows some of them. And we have some art here. You can see one screenshot of a guy like standing outside. And like I said, a lot of these games, they kind of look like, if you take off your glasses, it looks like House of the Dead 2. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like overcast skies, kind of muddy zombie guy. But I'm intrigued that it's a remake or like a reboot of a Mega Drive game. That's really cool.
And the Chaken is one of those games that I feel like the cover sold the game more than the actual content in the game itself. Like the guy with the hat and looks very, I don't know, horror-esque.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I would have been interested, but I don't know if they would have been, like, would that be a B or a C, or what would you put this at?
That feels like a B. I feel like it would have had its fans. I think it would sit alongside well with like Agartha, something like that. This next one, I'm already dragging it over to the lower right hand corner, and this one is of course Chenwen no Sengo Kushi. That's from Game Arts.
We're good.
It did release to the PS2 in November 2001, but like I said, it's a sim game from Japan. Like, whoop-de whoop.
It definitely didn't win. It didn't sell PS2, so we're good.
No, it didn't. The next one's called Chikyu no Tamodachi.
And another one that we
Chikyu
know
no Tamodachi
nothing?
from Nextech. The genre is ETC, like etc. I guess. Nothing known about it, at least on the wiki. So, again, it's almost like
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's almost like it never existed. And that's no slam on Japanese games, but like, come on. Colin McRae Rally 2.0 from Codemasters. Man, this was a sequel to the 1998 Colin McRae Rally. A Dreamcast version was announced by Codemasters as their only Dreamcast release, but it was canceled when the firm pulled out of Dreamcast development in late 2000. What do you know about the original Colin McRae Rally? I feel like it's kind of a crummy game, right?
We had Sega Rally, so put this at the C tier. I don't care about it. I'm sure it would have been fine, but come on.
Yeah, Colin. Sorry, Colin. He sits next to Austin Powers, though, so I guess that's cool. The next one is Commandos 2 from Eidos Interactive and developed by Pyro Studios. And since we have a sequel, that tells us that there is a first game. So yeah, the original game, it was a 1998 PC game called Commandos Behind Enemy Lines. It was originally going to release to the Dreamcast, but like all these games, it was canceled. Other versions gained the subtitle Men of Courage before release. The Dreamcast version was canceled after Eidos reevaluated its investment in the game, citing Sega's decision to pull out of the hardware market. Pyro Studios would instead focus on the PS2 and Xbox releases, although the PS2 version would miss its winter 2001 deadline by another 8 months. So this is a game that did release to other consoles, but was massively delayed. Do you know anything about Commandos?
Well, I'm looking at pictures, and it looks like a isometric, kind of like... there's a remaster on Steam, and it's got a 6 out of 10 reviews. I'm looking at... Yeah, it's like an isometric game from what I see. Where like it's a PC where you click your guy and it moves. So
Sounds like a C to me.
yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna put it there.
This next one would have been developed by Pivotal Games and published by Sci Games, SCI, Conflict Desert Storm. Not much is known about it. The name Desert Storm, it's kind of a crummy war no one really wants to think about anymore.
Right. So definitely forget about it, tier D.
Yeah, I don't even want to say unfortunately. It's like if they made a game called Iraq War.
Right,
it's
you're
like,
right.
I don't want to play that. We shouldn't have even done that. Next one's called Crack 2, which
I never
of course,
played Crack 1.
I never played Crack.
Right.
It's actually such a forgettable game that Sega Retro will freeze up on me as I click on it. But yeah, not much is known. It is a simulation game.
That's going to be on Forgot About It.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know about Crack 1. I don't want to search for cracks on Google. I don't know what'll show up in my search results.
S tier.
So,
S tier, the next
S-tier.
one. I'm not even going to look at it.
Oh, the next one?
I don't care.
Oh, man, it's Crunch Boondikit. It's Crash Bandicoot, The Wrath of Cortex, developed by Traveler's Tales, and published by Konami. And, of course, this game, it does exist.
Right.
It would have released to the Dreamcast, though, but the game was initially planned for the PS2, and a Dreamcast port was considered early in development as part of a collaboration between Universal Studios and Konami. It was canceled when Sega dropped their support for the platform, with The Grinch ending up being the only game released from this collaboration. So, The Grinch, George, we covered that recently.
Right. Great game, too. Imagine
Well,
this and
yeah,
The Grinch together.
2-pack
Right.
combo. I think name recognition alone bumps this one up to a B.
Right.
But Grinch recognition keeps it from being an A. Now, there are great Crash Bandicoot games, but I wouldn't maybe put this one as one of them. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think I played this one, so it's kind of hard for me to say that it's a great one. I'm looking at the gameplay, and it looks like a Crash Bandicoot game. But then again, it's not by the developers of the original 3 that everyone liked. So where did you put it at?
I would say a B just because name recognition.
Okay, B's good.
I mean, if Bloody Roar 2 is in there, I think Crash Bandicoot is.
Bloody Roar 2, look at the gameplay, people. I'm telling you,
right.
It could be fun. So
Now, this one I feel like is almost trying to take a bite out of Crazy Taxi. It's Crazy Car Championship.
no,
It would have been developed by Synaptic Soup, and we know nothing about it. Crazy Car Championship. Where would you put this?
Well, if we don't know anything about it, definitely the bottom. Forget about it.
D.
Yeah.
I feel like it probably would have been a very boring game, even though it's crazy. There's nothing crazy about it. Croc 2
Right.
from Argonaut Software and published by Fox Interactive. Now, this is a game that was released. There's quite a bit to say about it on the wiki. I won't get into it, but it was due for release on the Saturn. And let's see, was once due to released on the Saturn, Dreamcast, and N64, but those ports didn't materialize. Dreamcast version was announced summer '99. But yeah, it just never happened. It was on PC and PlayStation, and it's a fine game, I guess. But according to the lead designer, Nick Cusworth, no serious work was done on the Saturn or Dreamcast port. In fact, he doubts work even started.
Croc 1 was on Saturn. Do you have it?
I don't have the first one on Saturn, no. I've heard okay things about it.
Yeah, I heard it's just like mid. So I would say would a sequel port to a PlayStation 1 game, I think it would put it in the same vein as not Tony Hawk Pro Skater level for sure, but maybe PlayStation 1 Spider-Man or a little bit lower, because that one's probably a little more name recognition. So probably C.
Yeah, next to Alien Resurrection, it feels kind of like in that sort of wheelhouse. Next one's from developer Classified Games, and I guess this game was classified because we don't know much about it. It was Cutaway. It would have been a third-person action game, and very little is known about it. There was a promotional poster on the internet, but aside from claiming to have gameplay similar to Resident Evil, no other details were known. And honestly, like the Ring Terrors Realm was a game that released that has gameplay similar to Resident Evil, and that was a pile of garbage. So I'm going to delist this one. And
all right. I agree.
I think we should cut it away. From developer Ion Storm, we have Daikatana.
This one came out on PC. It's considered literally one of the worst games ever made.
Is it really?
Yeah, well, it's made by the same guy that made Doom, one of the designers, and he was like, this is going to be better than Doom. This is going to, like, reinvent FPS, and it was so hyped, and then it came out and it wasn't good, so everyone, like, it kind of became a, like, meme game, like, where everyone's like, oh. But I'm pretty sure this is the one I'm thinking about. Let's see, Google.
Well, regardless, it's getting the D because it's a shoot 'em up that we know very little about. So, sorry, Daikatana.
It is out on PC, but it's just hated. Yeah. So I would put it on D just because of the backlash it got as a game, period.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
This next one from publisher and developer Metro 3D, it's Dark Angel Vampire Apocalypse. It would have been an action RPG. It was released for the PS2, but originally it was a Dreamcast exclusive, being advertised shortly after the console's launch, before development began concurrently on the PS2 version. After several delays, the PS2 port got priority, and the Dreamcast version was ultimately canceled due to waning support for the system. And we do have some looks here at... what are we looking at here for the screen? It's an idea of the fighting, so you can see the bars there. This game always confused me because Dark Angel is also like a B movie, and I thought this was like an adaptation, but I don't think it is. But they both star like... I think it's been a couple things. Okay. It's a popular name to apply to a lot of stuff, though, that it's like the biggest franchise that isn't a franchise, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's out, but I don't hear much about it.
So I would say it's a D because it doesn't even really tie into a popular... Like, it's not really tied into a show or a TV or anything, right? It's just its own thing.
I mean, just in terms of reviews, it's gotten 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10. So yeah, considering we know the result, I would D this one. If it did release to the Dreamcast, I'd rather play Austin Powers over it. So that tells you something. From Next Tech, we have Dark Eyes. Dark Eyes is a 1999 MMORPG for Windows PC. It's one of the few games Next Tech developed and published itself rather than for another company. SEGA, who had complete ownership of Next Tech at the time, I wasn't aware of that, announced a port to the Dreamcast at some point in 99, but this version was not completed for whatever reason. Yeah, it apparently would have had up to 3,000 players in one environment. So, I've
never heard of this MMO, so...
I feel like it might deserve a B just because it's a MMO RPG that's not PSO, and I feel like Dreamcast was lacking in any online RPGs. Did 100 Swords, that was for... What was that for?
Wasn't
PlayStation 2?
I think so.
Or was it PC only?
I think it was PC only in Japan too, I think. It says right here it was on Dreamcast, even though I don't remember it coming out on Dreamcast. Did it? Japan only?
I don't remember. Oh, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, this, like you can tell, like there weren't that many.
Right.
So yeah, I would say B just because it's intriguing. This next one, Decay. It would have been from Insomnia Software and published by Interplay, and not much is known about it. Insomnia Software sounds familiar, but I
Well, I guess
I
it's
don't know
not the
anything
same
about
one.
this game.
Insomniac, I think we're thinking it's the guys that made Ratchet, but this is not the same developer.
No.
They're Insomniac, not Insomniac.
They tried to trick us, so that gives
right.
them a D for DK.
Right. Let's put it
No
on
tricking
D.
us. Yeah. The next one, this one's really weird. So DD Planet, developer Doridoc and Tomsoft, published by Sega. There's actually a lot about this game online. It's an unreleased Dreamcast game, obviously. It was developed as the second in a series of Dreamcast Network games following Choo Choo Rocket and was expected to release in late 2001 in Japan, and it was thought to have been canceled due to network-related bugs. And yeah, the graphics are super, super like low res. We did have cover art. There are screens, and if you can imagine like the worst graphics possible for a Dreamcast game, and then look at it and realize your expectations were like still too high, like this is how many players, and it's just like number 02 players, 03 players. It's just and the graphics look like Missile Command, right? Like
right.
It's interesting. I don't know how good it would have been. You make the call. We actually have a lot of materials on it, but it just never released.
Choo Choo Rocket was a lot better looking than this game, and I don't think I think it had a good advertisement, but like, how do you advertise this? Like, hey guys, we got a brand new Dreamcast that's competing with the PlayStation 2. Anyway, check this game out, and it looks like an Atari game. The online's cool. I have to put it. I don't want to give it a D because it's not terrible, but I would put it with the C, where it came out and hopefully it was fun enough for a lot of people to play. But I feel like we already had like, kind of looks like it wants to be like a Worms game, with worse graphics. So we already had Worms, so I would give it go down to C.
I'd agree there. This next one, Dear Avenger 3, also known as Dear Avenger 3D, it's a PC game and the third in the Dear Avenger series. It involves deers shooting at humans. A Dreamcast
Oh my god!
was planned but canceled. This one I'm mixed on. Like, it feels like Who Wants to Beat Up a Millionaire? You know, right. Like one of those like
goofy games.
The man game where it's just like a joke game, and I don't know.
And it's published by like literally a book company.
Yeah, Simon and Schuster Interactive.
Right.
I would see this one just because it's kind of like
it's funny. So
like,
at least that.
Yeah. So I think C is fair.
Okay.
If this did release, I definitely would want to own it, but just like how I'd want to own Austin Powers. Like,
got you.
It's kind of a joke game. Derby Owners Club Online. This one's interesting because I feel like, you know, Derby Owners Club is a well-known series. I've played the arcade version and really enjoyed it.
In like arcades?
Yeah, and
okay. How do you play it? Like, what do you do?
So you have a card, and then you have like a period of time to like care for your horse and feed it and all those things. It's kind of like chow races, and then you sit back and watch the race happen based on how you treated your horse, and you keep your card, which has your horse's name and stats on it, and then you can keep coming back to machines and playing it. I actually had my card for the longest time in my wallet. It was like a black stallion. So it's cool, and
it'd be interesting to see like how they implement like VMU and all that kind of stuff to it.
Exactly, and it did receive a PC release. It's unknown if the PC version would have been this version, but this one's a little bit above the right side D thing, because even though it never would have released in America, I definitely would have imported it just out of curiosity and to have a home version of Derby Owners Club, which is why I want to give this one a positive C.
Wow.
You know? It's like
Derby Owners Club on. I never played a game, but to me it always seems like, oh, this is one of those games I won't be into. But I don't know, you kind of intrigued me. I like the idea that it's kind of like a Chia Pet, kind of, or well, not Chia Pet, but like a Tamagotchi, but like an arcade version that you race.
And it always made me happy to carry the card with me because there's always a chance I would find the machine again and play it. It never happened, but it was exciting. And like I said, it did release in the West, at least in arcades, just not, So there is a chance, is what I'm saying. This next one from developer Pagan Games, it's The Devil's Den. It would have been a shoot 'em up, but it was canceled due to funding issues, in quotes. Which
People
makes it
didn't
sound
give
like
them
someone
money.
stole the money.
Right. Or
Yeah.
they were just we're called Pagan Games. Yeah, we don't care about religion, whatever. And we got a game called Devil's Den. That's so close to the developers. Like, the developers called Pagan Games, and they made a game called Devil's Den. Are you a pagan or are you a Satanist? But anyway, I guess
would you
D,
put
right?
this one?
D, forgotten because nothing happened. We didn't even get a screenshot.
Exactly. Yeah. This next one, I'm going to say lower right-hand D, just looking at the title, but I'll click on it and read a little bit about it. It's an unreleased sequel to Digital Kaiba Shinbun My Trackman. The name is called Digital Kaiba Shinbun 2. This is a sim game. Japanese love those sim games, and it's a horse racing game.
No, we already got our horse racing game up here, baby. Sorry.
Exactly. So it's a horse racing game, but it's not Derby Owners Club. So yeah, sorry. I only have one horse in my heart, and that is for Derby Owners Club. So we're actually almost at the halfway point, and I think we're going to kind of blast through some of these now. So let's just take a look at what we're seeing here. It's very bottom weighted.
Disc World, literally the book series, was going to have a game. I mean, I don't think they've ever released a game. I've read a couple of the books. I don't know if you know what Disc World is.
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of books.
Discworld Noir is a PC and PlayStation adventure game tied to the Discworld franchise, like you said, and there was going to be a Dreamcast port. It never happened, but it did release.
Right.
I'm intrigued. I would say this one's a B because I think if it released, it would have been a fun and interesting game that people probably would have checked out, but it wouldn't have helped the console or hurt it. It just would have been like a nice game to have.
C, we're going with this one?
B.
Or what? B, okay. I would agree. Discworld books are interesting worlds, so I'd give it just because of that. So go. What's next?
This next one's Dogs of War. The full title would have been Dogs of War Battle on Primus 4.
Oh,
it's a
even better.
real-time strategy game released for Windows PC. This was a Dreamcast version planned, which lacked the subtitle and just called it Dogs of War, but it was canceled for unknown reasons. During development, the game was also known as War Monkeys.
That's a nice name. I would rather play War Monkeys.
Me too. Silicon Dreams would have developed it, and I'm just going to... Before I make a decision, they also made Incredible Hulk for the Saturn. A couple soccer... They made a bunch of soccer games. So do you expect a war sim from a soccer company to be any good?
Well, I'm looking at footage right now online of the PC version, and it looks so slow, and the graphics look like... It has like this fog effect, and it looks like worse than a PlayStation 1 game, so I would definitely
D.
not... Yeah, D for sure. Sorry.
Sorry, guys. This one's from Surreal Software. It's Draken, and Psygnosis would have published it, who did the Wipeout games, but we know nothing about it.
So we have to put it in the forgotten Ds, but at least it's a good developer.
You remember some Ds, but some are forgotten. Yeah.
I agree.
Let me put that down there. All right. This next one's called Drones from Nigma Software. And I love when I click these ones, and there's actually a lot to be said about it. It was going to be released as a launch title in Japan. It was one of the earliest Dreamcast games to be announced, and it would have been Nigma Software's first game. It shared a similar aesthetic to the movie Tron, specifically Discs of Tron, which was the game within Tron, the disc game.
Right.
It demonstrated cutting-edge graphics, and they partnered with Compaq. It did see release under the name of Drones with a Z for PCs as a tech demo, and the Xbox as a Japanese exclusive. But at that point, the game had been radically overhauled to meet modern standards. It is thought the game missed the Dreamcast due to publishing issues, though the game was mostly finished in September 98. So, I don't know, like, it would have been... I mean, we kind of had this game. It's, what's that? Cosmic Smash. It's basically Cosmic Smash, right?
Right. I'm looking at pictures of it. If you go to the magazine section, there's a Sega Saturn magazine that has a few screenshots, and it doesn't look as impressive as Cosmic Smash, for sure. So, I would... I guess it depends on where you would put a game like this.
Maybe C?
Okay. I would say that's fine. At least we have some 3D graphics for it, and I think it would have been an interesting launch title for Japan.
George, you want interesting games. How about this next one? From 3D Realms, it's Duke Nukem Forever, the game that took, 20 years to release?
And then it was, like, shitted on. I mean, it wasn't the same game we were supposed to get back then, but... Like,
right.
have you ever played a Duke Nukem game that actually did sell consoles? Because I know Saturn had one, right? Did that sell Sega Saturn consoles? So
no, and that's why this one, it's interesting, because I feel like we're thinking of the modern release, but the game that was to come, I don't know, A, maybe B, but I feel like name recognition bumps it up a little. I think it would have sold really well.
Okay, so I think that would be enough for an A, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If Forever, the PC game that was super hyped, actually came out when it was supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. Dynamite Robo is our next game. This is from Warabe, and it's an action game that would have released in Japan, but we know nothing else about it. These ones are always interesting because, like, unlike all those Japanese Sims we were seeing, this is one where, I don't know, like, maybe C? But I'm going to do a very
Dynamite
rare
Robo?
C to the right side.
Okay.
Because I feel like if it did release, it would have been an action game named Dynamite Robo. Sounds cool, right?
Right.
Earthworm Jim 3D.
This is pretty, like, didn't it actually come out, but it's, like, terrible game and everyone makes fun of it? Like, there is an actual Earthworm Jim. Yeah, it came out on Nintendo 64, so it's a Nintendo 64 port of a game that was critically panned. So definitely put this on D, but no in D, because it was like one of the worst games for a franchise that was pretty like well liked on Genesis.
Yeah, that's fair. Next one is Echo 2: Sentinels of the Universe from Appaloosa Interactive. This would have been the sequel to Echo, which was also on the Dreamcast from Appaloosa Software. Little's known, there was an early prototype dated the 23rd of February 2001, found in a Dreamcast dev box, but it shows very little of what the game was going to entail. It's presumed to have been canceled due to Sega leaving the console biz. And I mean, the first Echo didn't really light the world on fire, but it's a nice little game to have.
I think it looks beautiful. Like, the water graphics they did, I think, pushed... I mean, you could literally be like, look at this game, looks better than PS2 games.
Right, and that's why I want to put this one in A, just because I do really like the first Echo on Dreamcast, just on a technical level, and I feel like 2... just like with a lot of sequels to video games, probably would have improved on a lot of things.
I already had it on A over here. Like, right when you said it was the sequel, I was like, A.
Well, what would you say to Ephemeral Fantasia from Konami? It's a PlayStation 2 RPG. It began its life as a Dreamcast game, but was reportedly set to feature a number of Sega-related cameos.
I know it came out on PlayStation 2. I've never played it on PlayStation 2. It kind of reminds me of, like, looking at it right now on online. It kind of reminds me of, what's that game on Dreamcast that's, like, Evolution or whatever? It has
the World of Sacred... Evolution and then Evolution 2.
It kind of reminds me of that kind of quality, but, like, the graphics remind me a lot of Skies of Arcadia in a way, like the way that the characters are animated, portrayed. There's pirate ships in it. And I think the Dreamcast definitely needed more JRPGs, so I think for just that alone, I would give it at least a B, just because I feel like at this era, everyone was going JRPG crazy, and the Dreamcast only had like 5.
But then there's Sega character cameos, which kind of pushes it to A for me.
Okay, all right, I'll give it the A then.
Yeah.
All right.
ESPN Baseball Tonight from Konami. Another baseball game canceled. Did we really need another baseball game?
C,
no.
Right? I mean, it's
C,
cool to have more sports games for people to buy, but not for me.
And I think the same would go with the next game, ESPN Links Golf, also from Konami.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Man, we just should have all sports games. This would go so fast. The next game's called Experience.
Experience what?
Absolutely nothing is known about this game. We don't know the developer, publisher, region.
All right, so we'll put this in no experience, way in the down D, right.
Like, this is... I'm surprised that you can have a wiki page for something that's just the word experience. The next one is Far Nation. It would have been published from Sega, and there is a little bit to say about this. It's an unreleased MMORPG. Originally with the Dreamcast in mind, it was billed as being one of the first persistent online RPGs to be released for a console alongside PSO. However, the project was quietly canceled. Apart from being an online game in Japan, little is known about Far Nation. As well, Sega mentioned the game several times across the second half of 2000 and early 2001. There were no screenshots or gameplay footage, nor specific details given. Charles Belfield suggested this game may appear on other platforms, though it is not thought development moved beyond the Dreamcast. So
I don't think it ever came out. I've never heard of it. So like him saying, no, it might start. No.
It's hard to say. So this one, it's like it would have sat alongside PSO, but it never released, and we know nothing about it. So
the concept of another MMO is pretty cool, but since we never had anything, like how would we build that? You know,
C maybe, right?
Okay, I'll give it. I would say that.
Yeah.
It's good.
This next one, it's developer Polygon Studio Felony Pursuit, a racing game published by THQ for Windows PCs. This would have been a Dreamcast version of that game, but it was never released. In Germany, it was set to be retitled High Speed Pursuit.
Why? Because it felonies
I don't know. I know
much?
nothing about Felony Pursuit, but it feels like we had a lot of like bad boy racing games. Cops Gonna Get You on the Dreamcast, and
was that a PC game, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I agree. We had that one Speed Devils, which was just mid-tier, but I enjoyed a little bit of it. But like, we already had enough racing games on Dreamcast, so I would definitely be like C, whatever. It would be cool to have another racing game, arcade game, but yeah.
Well, I got another racing game for you. It's the Flintstones in Viva Las Vegas.
Oh, God.
Developed by my favorite developer name, Full Fat.
Full Fat.
And it would have been published by Swing. And there's, again, a lot to be said about this.
S-tier, right?
Yeah, it is S-tier. Well, it's based on the 2000 film of the same name, which was a sequel to the live-action Flintstones movie, which, in my opinion, is an awesome movie. I've never seen the sequel, and I don't want to.
Neither do I.
But I did like the first one. This version was canceled. A sample version intended for the press has since surfaced. Had it been released, it likely would have come out in late 2000 or early 2001. And yeah, not much is known if the game was going to release outside of Europe. Apparently it might have been a Europe-only version.
There's PS2 gameplay online, but it looks like you said, like, kind of a mid-tier, like, cheap tie-in game.
Right,
really
and
bad.
If you remember from our Wacky Races episode, there was a PlayStation 2 version of Wacky Races, which was a completely different game, even though it was a racing game. And same thing happened here, where there was a PS2 version of Viva Rock Vegas that was a racer game from Swing, but it was from a different developer, and thus it's not the same game. Having said all of that, I don't know, C, like with Austin Powers, it would have been stupid, but I would have wanted it.
Okay. It would have been on your the Grinch 2 shelf.
Exactly, my Grinch shelf, my Grinchy shelf. Next up, we have Flying Heroes.
That's all we know about it.
Not much
right?
is known.
Yeah.
Yep, nothing's known about it. What do you think? D?
D, definitely forgotten.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, Heroes of Flight. Next up, we have Fortress from Promethean Designs. Fortress is an unreleased, I keep saying that, but these are all unreleased, 2D strategy game. Gameplay is similar to the Worms series, or perhaps, ironically, the very successful Angry Birds series. It was canceled for unknown reasons. So yeah, it's, as the title suggests, Fortress, you are probably throwing things at a fortress and it uses simulation effects to knock it down. That's intriguing. That,
right,
to me, pushes this one up to B.
Yeah, I would agree. And it would have been interesting to like have it released and then have us be able to put on Twitter, guys, Angry Bird, this popular game copied, you know. It was on Dreamcast first.
I'd go a step further and say they might have a lawsuit on their hands, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. This one, Freelancer, nothing's known about it.
Nothing to do with Starlancer.
I want to say more. Yeah, maybe it's a... So if this was a simulator where you're a freelancer, like working for a company, that would be like B maybe, but D, because we know nothing about it. Sorry,
right.
Guys. Frontier, developed by Turbine Studios. It was due out for a 1999 release. It is a network-focused sci-fi RPG. It would have been a Dreamcast exclusive, but it was canceled for unknown reasons. And network-focused sci-fi RPG sounds cool to me.
Right.
It feels like a B.
Okay. I'll put Frontier on a B.
Because, you know, I'm thinking about Alien Front Online. That was network-focused, but it was just kind of like jump on, shoot things with your friends. But to push it a step further and have it be an RPG, I think any RPG with online components would have been much, much appreciated on the Dreamcast. From SEGA Europe, it's Future City. A tech demo was created by SEGA Europe to both familiarize itself with the then upcoming Dreamcast hardware and to help assist European developers by acting as an example Dreamcast game. It was built with Set 2 development kits were thought to have only 25% of the performance of the finished hardware, and it was not released to the public in any form, nor was it ever intended to be a fully fledged Dreamcast release. So I'm going to do something that we have never done here before. I'm going to delete it.
All right. Bye.
Because it existed as a tech demo. It was never intended to release.
And
why would we tier it?
And there's
right?
also pictures of it for only 25%, and the game looks like a kind of like a PS1 port, so it would make sense that only 25% of the power. So yeah.
Yeah. Publisher Interplay would have brought us Galleon, if that ever happened. It's an action game designed by Toby Gard, one of the big names behind the original Tomb Raider. It was announced for the PlayStation in '97, entered a protracted development cycle, moved to the Dreamcast before being moved again, and released in 2001 to the Xbox. Due to the significance of Tomb Raider, the game was hyped up by the gaming press, but a number of delays caused it to receive mixed reviews upon release. The Dreamcast version was set to be released in mid-2000, 6 months after a PC version, which was also canceled. PS2 and GameCube versions were also announced, but canceled. So this is a game that was really riding the coattails of Tomb Raider. It did release, and it got middling reviews, which
it looks rough.
Feels like a B to me. I feel like Tomb Raider saves it from C obscurity.
So where do you put it at?
I would say B.
Okay.
Because 3D action games are always good, and we're going to keep saying that. Published by Culture Brain, Gonzo Dobatsu Uranai Puzzle.
Yeah, I would put this on the D way down there,
Oh,
the
okay.
forgotten one.
I spent so much time saying it.
Well, it
and
was
if
beautiful.
you'll notice, I just called it Gonzo because I'm not putting that whole title in there. We
Right.
need room for better games like SEGA of America and Netter Digital, who did the cinematics for it. Geist Force. A prototype was dumped of this game. Yes, it's an unreleased Dreamcast game, one of the first games to be announced for the console, and the first Dreamcast game to be developed by SEGA of America.
Wow.
It was also one of the first to be canceled. Not much is known about it, other than it's a spaceship shooter similar to Star Fox 64. The cinematics were going to be from Netter Digital, who had previously worked on the series Babylon 5. Sega claimed the game had no load times, and it was shown at E3 98, and again at Tokyo Game Show 98, where it was reportedly 80% release. Two versions differed significantly, with speculation that the E3 version was entirely pre-rendered and used less than 30% of the Dreamcast power. It was going to be released as a launch title, but was canceled after mid-99. Reportedly, it was canceled after political infighting amongst the team and missed deadlines. According to the lead programmer, Nimai Male, the artwork was 90% done, programming was around 70% complete, and there was just a lack of confidence of the game succeeding in Japan, which is so funny because it's like, just release it in America and have it do well there. A prototype was acquired by Assembler Games in 2011 with the intention of releasing the game to the general public, with donors receiving specially pressed discs capable of running on Dreamcast hardware.
And did it ever actually get a...
It was dumped. The prototype was dumped.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I would say just because how many rail shooters did we actually get on Dreamcast? Like, you got to think about that.
Hardly any.
So I would say that
None.
puts it at least at a C, right? At least, like, minimum, right? Do you think it's up to B?
You know, I don't know, and I think I goofed. I didn't put Geist first in there. It says
Right.
Gonzo again.
I changed it on my end, so, but yeah.
I'm gonna say A.
Okay, A.
It would have been a launch title. It would have been a rail shooter. And I think looking at the Dreamcast American launch, it was such a strong launch because so many boxes were ticked. And I feel like having this one there, it would have stood out, you know?
Okay.
Yeah. This next one's intriguing. It's from Light and Shadow Productions, Gold and Glory, The Road to El Dorado. And yes, it's that cartoon,
Right.
El Dorado.
Didn't it do really bad,
it's
the cartoon?
I feel like now it's become the memes, like the animated GIFs of it have really taken off.
Right.
But it's a PlayStation, PC, and Game Boy Color game based on The Road to El Dorado. Dreamcast and PS2 versions were planned but canceled. I think it has kind of a Monkey Island vibe to it.
Yeah.
I think it looks kind of interesting. It reminds me... I mean, it's an action game, so it would have been like a cartoony action game, and there were some. There was like the Toy Story games. There was Chicken Run.
I was going to say Chicken
There's
Run is
102
probably the closest.
Chicken Run's good.
Yeah, this is the closest I would be like. If it's like Chicken Run, I would say that's like as good as I would assume this game would get. You know, like that'd be the best case scenario.
And I think looking at it, you know, Ubisoft being publishing it, that bumps it up to a B for me.
Okay.
What would you say?
I would say B's fine. For it, yeah.
Yeah. There was also Stupid Invaders. Remember that one? That was based
Right.
on a cartoon. Or the
Oh,
other
yeah.
way around. This one I just love saying, from Real Time Associates and published by Ripcord Games, Gorka Morka.
Goka Morka.
Gorka Morka. It's based on the tabletop game of the same name. A Windows port was also planned but canceled. On the Dreamcast, Gorka Morka was a vehicular combat game in which two people worked together to beat up to 15 other racers. In North America, at least, it was due to have online play with the hope for Dreamcast and PC players able to compete against each other. It appeared at E3 2000, was slated for a October-November release, but was quietly canceled. And to me, that sounds kind of fun, like a two-player versus a bunch of, I guess, AI-controlled vehicles online. I don't know. What do you think, Morka?
Just because the developer's been like, there are other games nobody really cares about and we never talk about them, even though it's a good idea, I would still put it to C just because they didn't prove themselves, and it's like I would have to see more, definitely, like at least screenshots.
That's fair. That's fair. We've got Gothic from Piranha Bytes, and nothing's known about it.
Really, isn't it? I want to say Gothic was a PC game, right? Is this supposed to be a PC port, or is this a totally different game?
It's got to be different if Sega Retro's not even saying anything. Piranha Bytes.
They said right here they had like a magazine, but they don't even have the article for it, so I can't see it. So I would say D, just because not knowing, because we don't know anything about it.
Alongside the greats like Crazy Car and Flying Heroes and The Devil's Den. Grand Prix 3 from Hasbro Interactive. Of course, it's the third in the Grand Prix series. It's a PC racing simulator, and this was a Dreamcast port. I've heard okay things about those games, but nothing that makes me yearn for a Dreamcast port.
Would it be at least enough for a C or a no in D?
Enough for a C.
All right.
Next up we have, oh man, this is a big one, George, from Midway Games, The Grid. So The Grid is actually a game that was released to arcades. It's a 1 to 4 player game, and it's amazing. It's a spiritual successor to Smash TV. The Dreamcast version was going to have online multiplayer, but it was ultimately canceled. Galloping Ghost has, I think, a 6-player setup. So I think you can actually play with more than 4, but obviously the Dreamcast would have been 4. If I'm correct, I think you could do network play with the arcade version. And there actually is also, at least as of a few years ago, another one at the Minnesota State Fair. But someone told me, like, it's a very rare game. I think only, like, 500 cabinets were made.
Oh, wow.
Because kind of like with the Daytona game, you would need like a huge row of them in order to get the full experience. But unlike Daytona, they really wanted to sell multiples. So yeah, it's I'm gonna say A, just having played it. People absolutely love this game. It's super fun. I don't know what to think. It's kind of like Power Stone meets like a third-person. What's that big one kids like? Fortnite. It's like Fortnite, but Midway.
I would say,
which is just awesome.
I'd say that since it's rare, the arcade, and it's like Power Stone. Like when people, I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to think. There was a Power Stone arcade machine in Japan or something, but like you never see, or like Super Monkey Ball, where it's like everyone knows it because of the consoles. That if this came out, people would have been, oh yeah, The Grid. You mean the Dreamcast game? Because like, how many people are going to play it? So yeah, it's a sweet game, and it was actually down last time I was at Galloping Ghost, but as soon as it's up and running again, I'm going to go over there and play it because I absolutely loved it. It's wild. It's so fun. Next up, we covered this game not too long ago on a Sega Talk. It's Gun Valkyrie, but there was a Dreamcast version that was in development. So we cover that on that episode. George, how would you have thought that iteration of Gun Valkyrie would have gone over on the Dreamcast? Do you think A, or... It was a Smile Bit game, so at the time, definitely an A for me. Like, anything they release after Jet Set Radio would literally be like, I'm buying it day one. I don't care. Mm-hmm. So I would say A, and even if I was a little disappointed in it, I would lie to myself and say it's the best game I ever played in my entire life.
That's fair. We have another big one here now. Half-Life. And again, I said Black and White would make a great Sega Talk. Half-Life for sure would be a great Sega Talk episode on its own. There's so much to be said about the development of this game and the eventual unrelease, but then there was a ROM dumped of it.
You could play it for sure.
Yeah, so Half-Life,
so this
on
game,
the Dreamcast. Do you think it would have helped the console?
I think so, just because at the time it was when it was this most popular and it was considered a groundbreaking PC title. It would be like if Half-Life 2 came out day one, pretty close to release. It did come out way later on the Xbox, and it even did really well on the Xbox as the orange box, they called it. The release with a bunch of other games. So this would have been putting Dreamcast up. People would be like, why wouldn't I buy a Dreamcast? It's $150 and I'm getting PC quality titles on it, right? They even had a Blue Shift game that actually improved the graphics from the PC version. So I would definitely put this as S tier, as a bragging rights for Dreamcast owners to be like PS2 and GameCube don't have. At least at the time, because the Dreamcast came out earlier and it would have came out in 2001, I think, right? Mm-hmm. So, I would definitely put it as an S tier game.
Now, this next one needs little introduction.
Never heard of it.
Developer Bungie. It is Halo, the game that really made the Xbox. I mean, I can talk about it, but yeah, S. Right. S, absolutely. And I feel like this is the one game on this list that really, I think, would have changed the trajectory of the Dreamcast and also probably would have led into a different history with the Xbox. I honestly think, there were those rumors of the Xbox being able to also play Dreamcast discs. And I think that maybe this is kind of would have been the transitional point. I don't know. I see this alternate future where Sega kind of bows out of making hardware, but they license their name to Microsoft for their consoles. So it's the Sega Dreamcast, Xbox, it's some sort of new console that's backwards compatible with Dreamcast, so that Microsoft is bringing on this whole library to their new console, but then also introducing new games. And so it kind of blurs the line between what is a Dreamcast game and what is an Xbox game. And I mean, if this game just released to the Dreamcast, I could see there being an enhanced Xbox port, so that it's kind of like the equivalent of now, where you can buy an Xbox game and it either plays on your Series console or your One console. It's kind of a transitional game, and maybe there would have been online crossover between the two. But this game had a very long development history. I mean, it could be its own Sega Talk, but at one point there was Dreamcast development, and that's about as much as I can say about it. But what are your thoughts?
I know that for a while it was even a Mac exclusive. It was supposed to be like an RTS game, and then they moved on to Microsoft. I don't know what. I mean, obviously, maybe they even had a Dreamcast version, so we don't know which one it is. Also, Halo on Xbox had really big open worlds that were only possible due to the extended RAM that the Xbox provided compared to other consoles.
Right.
But just having another FPS game and the fact that Halo 1 wasn't online because Xbox Live wasn't ready, that would make the fact that if they did make an FPS game, it would have been online on Dreamcast at least. So
yeah, and I will say the first-person shooter element was active when the Dreamcast development and PlayStation 2 development was going on. So it would have been closer to the Xbox version we got.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, excellent.
Excellent for sure.
I'm going to save us all the trouble here. Hamster Monogatari DC is going right over to the D corner there. Why'd they have to do that after we talk about Halo? Why'd they do that to us?
Mean.
And I'm getting to the point where I have to start overlapping them, because these forgettable Ds are just
Adding up.
They are adding up. And we have another one, Harukaze Sentai V-Force 2 from Ving. It is another sim. It's a sequel to Harukaze Sentai V-Force, which was a game that was released to the Saturn. It was a sim game.
Okay.
It originally came with a VHS cassette and 3 game discs.
That's pretty
So it was
cool.
beefy.
Yeah.
A VHS.
Heavy Metal?
All right, Heavy Metal FAC 2. Yeah, so Heavy Metal FAC 2, it was going to be developed by Ritual Entertainment, and it's a third-person shooter for the Windows PC, and this was the Dreamcast version that was canceled. The game was set to have an online deathmatch mode.
What do you think? Where will you rate this? Like, is Heavy Metal Magazine had a game?
I don't know. Well, Heavy Metal, wasn't that a movie, too?
Yeah, based on the magazine art, yeah.
Yeah, so it's gotten good reviews, actually.
So would you put that in the B or C?
I would give it B just because the reviews are actually really good.
All right.
All right.
Hellgate.
Hellgate. I really hope we don't know anything about this one because I just feel like dragging it over. Jester Interactive. It's an unreleased third-person vehicular shooter.
But there was an actual demo released so people could actually play it. Can you believe that?
Yeah. But again, we talked about this, how there was like a string of these like grim, dark vehicular games that I think started with Twisted Metal, and just kind of like all these copycats came about, and this just seems like another one. So I'm going to delist Hellgate just because we don't know much about it outside of that.
So
Yeah.
I am putting some gameplay, and it's super like the really it doesn't even make sense. So it was trying to be like a dark where you're in a ship and you kill things, so it kind of like Wipeout, but like a shooter where you would control the ship by turning it sideways, to go in a 3D plane. So it looks super incomplete because the physics don't even work correctly in the demo they released. I like the idea of it, but still D just because there was not enough release. Like the idea that you're like so it's like Twisted Metal in a way, but like Quake 2 shooter in a vehicle.
Okay.
Okay.
We have Hello Kitty's Cube Frenzy.
A.
Yeah, well, it actually released to other platforms, so it's not a big loss. It was on PS2 and Game Boy Color. Never would have released over here. I'm going to right side D that just because I don't think it's even worthy of an import, and you can play it on other consoles. This next one from New World Computing and published by Ubisoft, Heroes of Might and Magic 3. It's a sequel to Heroes of Might and Magic 2.
Oh, yeah, of course. I've heard it.
Dreamcast port was planned but canceled. And, it's a 2D RPG. It doesn't really push the graphics at all, but it's I think, reasonably well-liked franchise. Which leads me to think B, just because, it kind of sits alongside of Age of Empires 2. It's like a solid enough game, but it's not really turning any heads.
All right, we got oh no, another Japanese.
You just want to
one.
put this one over to the left on the right side in D, right? It's
right.
Hiro no Ken Retsuden. Nothing known about that one. Sorry, Ken. Then we have Hostile Waters. Hostile Waters from Rage Software, published by Interplay. It was a strategy game. It was little known about it, but it's a strategy game. The game was eventually released to PCs in 2001, where it was subtitled Hostile Waters Anxious Rising.
It's like,
and I think
it's like $3 on Steam. So if anybody wants to buy and own this beautiful game, I mean,
it's got really good reviews, like 9 out of 10. People love it
on Steam. But it's like out of 137 people, I'm like, how many of these people played it back in the day and were like, this is my favorite game of all time?
I don't know. It's getting 8 out of 10s. Doesn't that give it a B, George?
All right, I'll give it a B, just because nobody hated it.
Yeah, no one hates it. Do you think anyone hates Hot Wheels Stunt Track Driver 2 because they're from Mattel Interactive? I mean, there was one.
Right, and it was okay.
This was a Dreamcast version, and it appeared in the Dreamcast press kit E3 2000, but was canceled. So, I don't know. It's a recognizable IP. I guess that's kind of cool. I don't know. B, maybe?
Just because of the IP name? All right, I'll give it.
Yeah, and I think it might have more than just racing. Like, I think there might be a little bit of a, I don't know, fun edge to it.
Any House of the Dead.
This is a big...
Any House of the Dead.
House of the Dead 3. Now, this one I would have loved to see.
Right.
We covered this one on a previous Sega Talk.
A Halloween one,
and
I think.
This is the one where they've got really funny arms.
Right. Imagine having that on Dreamcast, though, after 2, because 2 did sell well on Dreamcast.
Yeah, I think this one's a solid A, because I don't think it would have saved the console, but it definitely would have given us something to do with our light gun.
Oh, yeah.
This next one, Hoyle Casino 5. Oh, my God. They made 4 before this?
I'll put this on the D already, so you don't have to.
It's just... casino games kind of got old after, like... the Genesis, right? Like the fact that you'd like boot up a Saturn and be like, I want to play cards.
Right.
Kind of lame. Hype, the Time Quest from Ubisoft. It's also known as Playmobil Hype. It's a PC, Game Boy Color, and PlayStation 2 adventure game based on the medieval toy range from Playmobil. And it's an adventure game. I'd actually be very positive about this and say B, just because I feel like there aren't that many kid-friendly adventure games on the Dreamcast, and I think if it had the Playmobil branding, it would have been kind of like in the realm of like Lego games, which people really like.
And this, if it happens, the next one, do I just put that in D without even looking at what?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like it's an unreleased game called If It Happens, and it didn't release.
Right.
And I'd almost wonder if the name is like someone said, "Hey, are you making a game?" Well, if it happens.
Right, it never had.
That's the title.
Yeah.
And they're like, no. I mean, if it happens, we don't know if we're gonna make it. That's from Fujicom, and it's a table game, like based on tables.
Yeah,
maybe I don't know if it happens. Sorry. IHRA Drag Racing. I wish it was like a drag show game. I think that would have been more interesting. But that's from Bethesda Softworks. It's licensed by International Hot Rod Association for Windows, PC, and PlayStation. This is just a Dreamcast port that was canceled. It was the first of 7 drag racing games from Bethesda Softworks between 2000 and 2006, all of which were exclusive to North America. Yeah, I don't know about this franchise. I feel like we have enough racing games on the Dreamcast as it is, though. D. All right. Next up, we have Independence War 2, Edge of Chaos from Particle Systems. It's a PC space combat simulator and sequel to Independence War, or iWar in Europe. Dreamcast version was announced alongside PlayStation and N64 ports, but no console versions were released. We've had some, PC space games ported to the Dreamcast. None of them really are either bad or great. B, in my opinion, it wouldn't have hurt to release, but it also... this next one. This tickles my fancy. From LucasArts, it's Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. And this would have been a port of the PC and N64 action game.
D now?
I've heard
D now, this one? No, I'm joking.
Hey, come on now. I've heard good to mixed things about this one. It's not as good as Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb on the Xbox, but as far as 3D Indiana Jones adventures... For me, I always really appreciated when N64 games were ported to the Dreamcast because honestly, N64 games are... It's hard to play them, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because you got to get like the cartridge or you got to like emulate it, and it just feels like the uptick in graphics always helps. So this one feels like a B to me.
Okay. Even if
it's
Indiana
a recognized.
Jones?
I don't know, maybe A.
Yeah,
A.
I mean, it's got a very positive review on The Thing, and Indiana Jones is a big. It's like having a Star Wars. Like even the Jedi power battles I played because I was like, oh, it's Star Wars, and you get to fight with a lightsaber.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm sorry. I mean, I was gonna cry, but they would have been Innocent Tears, which is a game by Kobe, not Kobe Bryant. It's an unreleased Dreamcast simulation game that was released to the Xbox later. I know nothing about this.
It's so anime.
Innocent Tears.
I'm looking at
it's
okay. So first of all,
so in the D tier.
there's this one where there's girls having a period, and this is Innocent Tears on it. I'm not even lying. This on the magazine scan.
Put it in the thing. Put it in the bin.
Where's
I
this
should put a
D
little
or
garbage can over there.
Yeah, all right. We should have.
I think right side D because we can't play it. You know.
I ran out of room here on my right side. It's so packed.
It's becoming a pile for me. This one's really weird. So this is called Internet Game Pack, which is the worst name I've ever seen for a video game. It's from Visual Concepts, who we of course know from the NFL and NHL and all those 2K games. But they were also known for wacky stuff like Ooga Booga and the Floygan Brothers. And this would have sat alongside that. It would have been a probably a budget title. It's 6 tabletop games. It's chess, poker, dominoes, reversi, spades, and Go. Games could be played both online and offline, which gives this a little edge. I feel like this would have sat alongside Sega Swirl as a casual online game that would have been
But
fun.
would you?
I don't know.
Would you? It would have to be like given out with like a keyboard or something like that, right? Like it wouldn't be able to be like a full price title.
No, and the ROM was dumped, so I'm definitely burning this. Visual Concepts always did really fun offbeat games outside of the 2K stuff. This one, it doesn't scream wacky, but I appreciate it. I'd put it in B.
Okay.
I think we know enough about Visual Concepts to know it would have been decent at least. And how do you screw up checkers? I've never heard someone go, "This game's rigged. This game's unplayable. It's checkers."
Right.
Invictus in the Shadow of Olympus, which is a beautiful name for a game we know very little about.
D.
Wow. Yeah, they tried so hard too with that title to save it, but
they had a good
you
title.
You can't save yourself. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Irisan from Sega. Irisan is actually a tech demo shown at the Sega New Challenge Conference. It exists of an animated head of then President Shoichiro Iramani, which shows off various lighting, transparency, and particle effects. Also features a brief appearance by Sonic the Hedgehog. A model used for Sonic was used for Sonic Adventure, which at the time wasn't officially revealed. So this tech demo was Sonic's debut of his new design. Yeah.
I think it's cool to have tech demos, but I would have put them as unreleased games because it wasn't a game.
No, I would
love to see this dumped. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, I would too.
So yeah.
We have Jamang 2. It is basically Mahjong. It's an unreleased Mahjong game. Like we didn't have enough Mahjong games.
Yeah, we're good.
It's interesting. So I did the Sega, the arcade adventure meetup, and there was a guy there who teaches Mahjong to people.
Did you put him in the D rank right away?
And he does. I put him, and he does Yakuza walkthroughs. So he's online. He does Yakuza streams and walkthroughs.
You could teach me how to beat the Mahjong on there.
He writes for GameFAQs.
Oh, nice.
And he's a cool guy. We played this one game all the way through. I forgot the name of it, but it was like a very Japanese game, and he was helping me play through it. This next one, I feel like I wish it happened just so that Angry Video Game Nerd would cover it. It's Jekyll and Hyde from the developer In Utero, which is where like babies are.
Right.
It's an action-adventure Windows PC game that actually was released in 2001.
It looks bad.
And this would have been the Dreamcast version that was canceled for unknown reasons. There were a couple of prototypes leaked. Yeah.
This looks kind of bad. I don't know. It reminds me of that Dark Creatures game.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a 3D game, so maybe C, but I'm thinking D.
Yeah, I feel like Jekyll and Hyde, it's good as a movie, but they keep trying to make games about it, and I understand why, because it's like Normal Man Transform, and you can have two play styles, but just give it up. Don't make it. This one's called Julian.
D.
It's an adventure game, and nothing's known about it. Yeah, unfortunately, even the adventure genre can't save it. At least Dynamite Robo, we knew a little bit more about it, but that's going in that big old pile. Jump Runner from developer Glass Ghost. It's an online space simulator.
How many space simulators were they making on Dreamcast, right?
But it was canceled. We know nothing about it. Space Simulator
D.
won't save you. D pile. The next one's called K1 Dream. K1 Dream. It's a kickboxing game. So it's an unreleased kickboxing game in Japan. What do you think?
I mean, we don't know anything about it, so I would say D, because if we had some screenshots, we could at least put it in the C tier. I do like the idea of a kickboxing game, because I feel like that UFC game on Dreamcast was actually really fun. So any game that would be like in that style, I'd be all into it. But since we don't know anything about it, it's a D.
This next one probably also falls into that. It's Kaiscrew. It's an unreleased Dreamcast RPG. Development moved to the PS2 and GBA before it was canceled.
Not even a screenshot.
Unreleased. No, we didn't get anything. So that kind of like they lose. This one's interesting. La Femme Nikita. La Femme Nikita was a TV show, and this was going to be a action game based on the TV show. It originally started life as the Mission Impossible 2 game for Nintendo 64.
Wow,
so,
what a weird change in IP.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, I feel like this would sit in the B because it's a known IP, or it's a known TV show, but it's not quite up there with like.
But we didn't get anything of it, so wouldn't that put it down to like a C at least?
Maybe. But I feel like the license kind of saves it and gives it a little more interest, wouldn't you think? Well, C. Let's do C. Because if Austin Powers gets that...
Yeah, Austin Powers is too good, so...
So we are nearing the end of the line. We have Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 2.
Oh, this would have been pretty badass. Of course,
Legacy of Kain, the first one, I feel like a lot of people like that game. It has its own little fan base. This would have been a direct sequel, and it was later released to the PS2 in 2001.
I think it's
Soul
PC,
Reaver 2
obviously.
was marked. Yeah, it was Soul Reaver 2 was originally going to be the PS2 or for the original PlayStation and Dreamcast, but it was eventually moved to the PS2. The Dreamcast version was set to give Raziel 3 times as many polygons while maintaining 60 frames per second gameplay. And I remember that distinctly with this game. Is just how smooth they looked, So I'm gonna. I feel like A.
Right, for sure, easy A. Like I remember having conversations with people on the at school because there was a lot of Soul Reaver. There was a friend that liked Soul Reaver on PC, and I would be like, the Dreamcast looks and plays as smooth as the PC version at least, and he's like, no, the PC's best. But I'm like, yeah, that's like a $1,000-something machine. The Dreamcast is like less than $200, so definitely a big game for it.
This one is Legend of the Blade Masters from developer Ronin Entertainment. It's an unreleased RPG. It was advertised but not released. It was announced simultaneously with the similar Quest of the Blade Masters, a version of this game with online features. So they were planning to release the same game twice, but one would not have online features and one would, which happened, I think, maybe 1 or 2 times on the Dreamcast with like Speed Devils and Speed Devils Online. A PC version was eventually released in 2002, which incorporates the online features. So, C, maybe?
Okay.
RPG, online
I
features.
feel like we needed those, but we don't really know too much, so C, sorry. It would have been an easy up if you just gave us something here.
Yeah. From Rain Software, we have Lean Orakani Kimi no Uta, which would have been an adventure game.
Nothing
Let's
knowing.
see. It was ported from the PC version, so it would have been a PC port of something. I don't know. Japanese.
Right.
I don't know. So we're gonna lean over to the right on the bottom. This one's called Litherby. Litherby. It's an unreleased puzzle game in Japan.
Okay, so D then, because I mean, we need more puzzle games there. Like Choo Choo Rocket was a
No, we
good,
don't.
unique puzzle game. We had Puyo Puyo later on, so come on, step it up.
Little Dream. It's an unreleased action adventure game from Panther Software. We know nothing about it, but
There's a
think
magazine.
it would have been.
There's some magazine screenshots here you can see, and it's creepy looking game. It has like these like very like primitive CGI, like like when they put CGI cutscenes in like Sega Saturn games.
Yeah.
It looks like that, but game played like that.
But it would have been it would have been Japan only probably. So,
Right.
yeah. Manx 2.
Where we put Little Dream again?
I would say D to the right, just because. Well, let's put it next to Dynamite Robo, because I feel like there's a chance it would have been ported.
Dynamite Robo. What we put that in the D's, right?
Oh, I put Dynamite Robo in the C's.
Okay, so in the C. All right, sorry. It's just that we have so many names on here that I'm trying to look through them.
Oh, you're gonna get another one to put in that little D pile. It's Manx 2. Nothing known about it.
Okay, beautiful. Oh,
Absolutely
this
nothing.
next one's actually some discussion.
Yeah, so Max Payne from Remedy Entertainment and 3D Realms, published by Take-Two Interactive. A Dreamcast version was planned, but it was canceled in the autumn of 2000. Of course, there's a lot to be said about Max Payne. It just never released to the Dreamcast. Do you think this would have helped the console sell more units?
Yes, because like when I had my PC when I first got it, Max Payne was literally like it has to run Max Payne because I thought it was such a sick game. It's like the slow mo, the leather jacket. It was literally like a gritty kind of noir cop video game with a narrative that was taking the aesthetics of the Matrix with the slow mo as a gameplay addition, and it was it was really, really well done. So at this time, everything was slow mo because of the Matrix. So I would say this game was really popular, and it was a big deal, especially for Dreamcast that wanted to have PC quality games at home. So I would definitely put this as an S tier for me, at least, for sure.
I'd agree with that.
Okay.
How about Mech Warrior 4 Vengeance?
I've never
Mech
played.
Warrior.
I know there's a lot of people that love Mech Warrior, and they're like one of those simulator games where people buy those big old sticks with a bunch of little buttons and they pretend to be anime characters.
Yeah.
So I would put this at least in the B tier for me because I've never really played them and I'm never really into them, but I know that a lot of people do like them.
That's fair.
It has like
That's
a cult
fair.
fan base.
Cult won't save a console, though.
No, but B is not saving. I would say it's just like a good game.
I mean, it's not as though the game is like the Dreamcast's Messiah,
Exactly.
which is the next game we're talking about. It's a third-person shooter for Windows PC. Interplay announced a Sega Dreamcast version, but the port was put on hold before being canceled. It was reportedly a continuation of Scavenger's 1996 game Terminus. Do you know anything about this game? It's from Shiny Entertainment.
I've never heard of it. I thought it was Messiah Might and Magic, where it was like a first-person magic game, but I'm looking at it here and it's nothing like that, the gameplay. It has some cool...
Shiny Entertainment is strange because they did Earthworm Jim and then they
Right.
did the Golden Compass.
This looks like whatever. A Golden Compass, great. It looks okay.
What would you say?
So you play as you have like a little angel, a little cherubit, the little baby, and he could fight too. So you could send him out to fight bad guys and like take over their mind, and then you take over the soldiers, and then you could fight as. So you're like an angel that takes over bodies, a little baby angel with a pamper and everything.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I would give it a C just because you play as a little baby angel that takes over people's minds and makes them blow things up. Sounds pretty...
That's fair.
Yeah.
This next one is Metal Max Wild Eyes. It's an unreleased game that would have been part of the Metal Max series, and it was published... It was going to be published by ASC2, who of course made that beloved Fight Pad. Metal Max, it's a role-playing video game series
Literally
in
never heard
Japan.
of it.
It seems very popular, but I honestly got to say, despite having, a bunch of popularity, I don't know. On one hand, we did cover a game that was the first ever Western iteration of a very well-known and beloved Japanese IP, which is, of course, I'm blanking on the name, Berserk. Mm-hmm. Sort of the Berserk. So with that in mind, this kind of feels like it could be a C, because I feel like it may had been ported had it released in Japan.
So,
and I feel like Metal Max might have a little bit of a Mad Max sort of, I don't know, there's something there.
Ooh, the next one's weird, but it makes sense considering.
Microsoft Combat Flight Simulator. Those have their fans for sure. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to say A, but I think a very solid B.
Right, I would agree with the Beast here, because I think it's like putting it next to like Castlevania and Knights and Echo 2, it's a little too much.
And I think the same can be said with the next one too, Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Right.
Having that would have been cool, but whatever. And it's interesting, Konami would have been publishing both of those games. Konami was planning to release it in Japan alongside other Microsoft-published PC titles. And it was unknown if these would be straight ports or something more specific to the console. It would have been cool if it was like its own thing.
What about Microsoft?
We'll never know.
Lynx LS, which is like a golf game.
See, that one I'd bump down to C just because we don't need more golf games. And I just feel like, flight simulators at least are a little more fun. And that's part of Konami's deal of releasing a bunch of Microsoft stuff that never went through. Midnight GT, it's a racing game for the Windows PC. A Dreamcast version was planned, but scrapped.
I never really heard of it, and people don't talk about it too much. So I mean, maybe C.
Yeah,
it's a cool PC port, but we had a lot of racers, and Sega made really good racers, so kind of hard to compete.
And we also have Midtown Madness. It's a racing game again for PC. It was going to come to the Dreamcast in Japan, but it didn't happen.
It kind of looks
like...
Yeah,
and this again is from Konami.
It looks kind of like a racing game, but like with Crazy Taxi style graphics in a way, and like there's an actual map that you have in the corners, and it even has the little Crazy Taxi arrow to know where you're going. It is whatever to me, so I would put this in, at least for me, a C for just this one, because it's just another whatever.
All right, this next one is an interesting one. It's Midway's Greatest Arcade Hits Volume 3.
Oh, yeah.
It was a planned compilation for the Dreamcast following in the steps of Volume 1 and 2. I don't know, I thought Volume 1 and 2 were fine. I think more games would have been appreciated. It's no loss that it didn't happen, but I'm always for more retro compilations on the Dreamcast. I think B.
Okay. B.
This next one's called Millennium Racer Y2K Fighters from Crete Studios. We have a look here at the title screen. It's a futuristic racing game for Windows PC, and the Dreamcast version was planned. but never officially announced and canceled for unknown reasons. A prototype was found hidden on a dev box, and I don't know, this looks kind of cool, but I feel like there's a lot of like wacky futuristic racers on the Dreamcast already that it kind of would have gotten lost.
How
you rank it?
I would put it with the other racing games that we were supposed to get, and we have some like just a C. It would have been Released. It would have been like Speed Devils Online, where some people played it and they have fond memories of it, but it didn't shake anything up.
Right, that's fair. This one's interesting. This next one is called Monster Breed. It would have been developed by Cybele and published by NEC. It is, let's see, and it was going to come to the U.S. in early 2000. It's a sim game. So that
D
saves it, I think, from the D pile.
Really?
Because it would have received a release in the U.S. And, we've talked about some wacky games that received, we had Egg, remember?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you never know. Monster Breed could have been like the next Egg.
Well, how about the sequel to, Monster Breed, but what about Monster Breeder?
That's what I find interesting. So this is a completely different name with a very similar name. It's an action game. It, as far as we know,
nothing
may or may not have released in the U.S. because it was covered by Western press, but we know nothing about it. So it's like
a D. Because
do we give it?
I'd say a D's.
Do we give it
a D's fine.
Yeah, I would say Monster Breeder probably gets a D, but to the left side. Well, to the right side.
We don't know anything about it,
big
sadly.
wacky pile. Speaking of monsters, we have Monster o Tsuruku. Oh man, I can't even say this one. Monster o Tsuruku,
D.
Unreleased sim game in Japan. So, man, and here we go. The final three. The final three. So, next we have from Rebellion Developments and Universal Interactive Studios and published by Konami. The Mummy, known as Humanoptera Ushinawa I can't even finish it, in Japan. It's a PlayStation action game based on the Brendan Fraser movie, and this was going to be the Dreamcast port.
Wasn't that like panned, the PlayStation 1 version?
I'm pretty let's see. We owe it to the Mummy PS1. People like this game.
Oh, shoot. I mean, I was going to say the S word, but of course not, because, YouTube. I'm surprised. I'm looking at some of the gameplay right now.
7. It's getting a solid 7. I think this would have been a B.
Oh, my God. Brendan Fraser looks amazing in this PS1 graphics. Kind of reminds me of... Kind of reminds me of, like Tomb Raider, which is trying to be Indiana Jones, so it's kind of that.
It was a really solid movie. It's a 3D action game. I think B.
All right.
If Crash Bandicoot can be there, then I think this can too. Muppet Monster Adventure. Not much of anything is known about this, but I think it's cool to have kid-friendly like adventure games. There aren't that many on the Dreamcast outside of like Sonic.
Right.
So I'm going to put this one in B just because Muppets alone don't have that many console games, and
dang, Muppet
I think
fan.
Kids would have liked this. Hell yeah.
All right.
And then lastly, ending it with a whimper, it's Mistreat Fukagayuku Sekai no Tensai Shinshi. It's a adventure game. It's a sequel to Tentai Shinshi Dash, and was ported from the PC version with all pornographic content removed. So I think the fact that they removed the porn makes this one probably go in that. What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point when we could just go on the internet web browser and check all that stuff out? Everybody knows that. All
right. So let's take a look at this now. We went through every single unreleased Dreamcast game from A through M.
Right. Halfway. Of all the games.
And I'm going to make you happy. The second one is actually shorter.
Okay. But
So part 2 is going to be a little shorter.
I will say a lot of them are B and under. I think the A and S tier so far is like a very rare thing to get, like Baldur's Gate, Black and White, Half-Life, Halo, and Pain. Max Payne, I feel like a lot of our S tiers are like really critically acclaimed PC games that we were like, oh
Yeah.
man, imagine us being able to be like, we have it on Dreamcast, right?
Right, and I think we're approaching this too from like, I know we're Sega fans, and I know there's people listening or watching who are like, man, you guys don't believe in Knights or the House of the Dead 3, and it's like, no, we love those franchises, but I just don't think they would have helped the system. I think they would have been just good games to have to beef up the library, but I don't think we would be bringing on new people who would have been like, you gotta buy the Dreamcast, dude. It's got Baldur's Gate, it's got Half-Life, it's got Halo.
Yeah. It could have literally
Yeah.
replaced a PC, especially with the way that they were advertising it in America with the keyboard and mouse and bundling it in the online, and then having Max Payne, Halo, Half-Life, Black and White. That's why I think they're on S tier.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not the end. We will be back on the next Sega Talk for part 2, where we're gonna go through the N's through the W's. There actually are no X, Y's, or Z's. But who knows? Maybe someone will dump some X, Y, and Z ROMs between then and now. Any final thoughts before we close out?
I'm not surprised that a lot of them are games that we didn't even get a title screen for. I think back then there was a big thing for Sega Dreamcast Magazine to announce any like scrap of info of a game that somebody even in the bathroom talked about. Like, well, we're gonna make this game on Dreamcast maybe, and then bam, it just showed up on the official Dreamcast Magazine. And I think a part of that was the bad press that the Sega Saturn had for not having enough games. They were like, make
Right.
games, please, 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 and going to every developer under the sun and under any rock to get any game out. So yeah, I'm not surprised that a lot of them just nothing happened. But what are your thoughts? Are you surprised that a lot of them ended up in the D tier?
I'm not. I feel like there were just, of course, there were going to be unreleased Japanese titles, and I feel like a lot of those fill that because there are released Japanese titles we never talk about. So, you know, they're just games for someone else who's not us, and we're looking at this from an American perspective. I'm actually surprised that there aren't as many D tier games that are Western. I feel like most of them are just because we don't know much about them, so why would we elevate them at all? Stuff like Gothic, stuff like Invictus. I feel like you said, like people were just being asked, what are you working on? And they would like throw out a name just to probably give their studio a little clout and relevancy. I mean, imagine if you and I were like, George, let's get into game development. You're like, yeah, and we're like, let's make a game, and we put out a press release. That's gonna turn some heads at Sega and get people calling us saying, hey, you guys need a dev kit? You know, like, and that's probably the case for a lot of those. But yeah, I'm surprised to see so many games that are actually. I think I'm surprised that the S tier is all games that you can play.
Right. Because we know that they left a legacy behind, so I think it's easier for us to be like, if it released literally in the prime of these guys, like the Dreamcast was out from 1999 to 2001. Like PS2 wouldn't have had a Max Payne port yet, so it would have been very unique to get it first. But
yeah, and I'm also surprised that the A tier is either games that eventually did get released in some form. Or I mean, looking at this, the only
2 Xbox exclusives.
Right, yeah, we had one that became Air Knights became a Wii game. House of the Dead 3 got Xbox. Soul Reaver 2 did release on PS2. Buffy did release on Xbox. Geist Force is the one big one here that is the first Sega of America developed game. It would have been a launch title. It never happened. But yeah, we did get Gun Valkyrie on Xbox. Castlevania then is another one where it's like
It just got lost. Yeah,
it just got lost. Ephemeral Fantasia did eventually get a release, but not
PS2
in the form that we
right.
would've
That's the
gotten.
RPG.
Duke Nukem Forever. Yeah, exactly. And then Duke Nukem Forever did eventually get released in a very different form. Echo 2 is kind of the lost game there. The Grid would have been awesome, but it's locked to arcades now. And then Indiana Jones just would have been a really good get because it's a well-known IP, but you can play that elsewhere. So, yeah, I'm feeling good about where this is going, and I'm looking forward to part 2. This is the Deathly Hallows, or the
part 1,
or the Catching Fire, or whatever it is. Like, we got to break it into 2 to get the views.
Mid-season finale cliffhanger, guys.
This is the finale, the Sega Talk finale.
We'll see you guys next time on Sega Talk for part 2. So I hope to see you guys there. Bye.